In this video, you will learn about one of the biggest new features in STL Trados 2015, which is Translation Quality Assessment, or TQA for short. Before I give you a live software demonstration, I would like to start with a story, a use case in which TQA would have been very helpful. It actually started with a project manager of a major German translation agency who assigned a job from German into Arabic to an external translator. Nothing fancy so far. The translator accepted the job, finished the translation, and delivered it to the project manager, who in turn delivered it to the end customer. The client, however, was utterly unsatisfied. He claimed that the translation was of very poor quality and therefore unacceptable. However, the client didn't explain why the translation had failed. Instead, he just used a very impolite term that I don't want to quote here to describe the quality of the translation. The translator, in turn, didn't understand why the client found the translation to be unacceptable. He told the project manager that he had given his best. He just couldn't understand why the client was complaining. Since the project manager didn't speak Arabic, he assigned the job to an internal reviewer to give his opinion. The internal Arabic reviewer considered the translation to be, well, generally acceptable. Not ingenious, but acceptable. The project manager then went back to the end client, but the client still was not convinced and insisted on a full refund. This in turn prompted the project manager to assign this job to an external reviewer, and this external translator was also supposed to voice his opinion. This external translator found a number of smaller or medium mistakes in the translation. However, he did not consider those mistakes to be critical. In this situation, we have 5 different players, thus 5 different opinions. Blame got passed around. There was no clear picture of who was right and who was wrong. There was no way of objectifying the quality of the translation. And ultimately, there's only one question. Was the customer's claim really justified or not? Translation Quality Assessment is a new feature that helps all parties involved in the supply chain. First of all, there is the project manager and the client. TQA allows them to set up quality criteria to meet their particular requirements. TQA also helps the project managers and clients to objectify the review process, as they can set clear fail and pass thresholds. And they all rely on a consistent framework for the evaluation of service providers. It is also advantageous for reviewers, because they can easily document corrections according to predefined criteria. There's no need any longer to write lengthy comments. They can generate objective quality reports with the final result that says pass or fail. TQA is very helpful for translators as well, because they can easily trace what has been corrected and why. They can update their translation memories with one click to avoid making those mistakes in the future. And they can clearly see what is important to the client. In this part, I'm going to show to you how TQA works in practice. Imagine that I'm now the project manager. I start by creating a new project. In a new project wizard, I click Browse to select a project template. Studio 2015 comes with a set of project templates that include industry-standard TQA models. For this project, for example, I'm going to select the Lisa QA model. Now I click Next to provide some general information on my project, such as the name. Let's call it TQA Test Project. It's not a very creative name, but it will do for a quick demonstration. Let us assume that this project goes from English into German, so I'm going to select German as my target language. Then on the next screen, I'm going to add one translatable file. And now that the file has been added, let me click Next to add a sample translation memory. Now I create a project by clicking Finish. And then I close. And here you see my TQA test project. You might now be interested to know what the LISA TQA model actually looks like. I'm going to take a look under the hood by accessing the project settings. The project settings include the Translation Quality Assessment profile. Every profile includes what we call categories. There are numerous categories in the LISA TQA model. For this reason, I'm just going to focus on one main category, doc language, that includes a number of sub-items. So a problem could be related to the accuracy, consistency, to the style, or the terminology of the translation. Apart from the categories, we have so-called severities. So, for example, a terminology error can be considered critical, major, or minor according to this TQA profile. Based on those severities, you can have the scoring, because when the reviewer reviews a translation, he or she can deduct penalty points based on the severity and the type of error. For example, a serious terminology error leads to the deduction of 10 penalty points. A major terminology error leads to the deduction of 5 penalty points. And for a minor terminology error, only 1 penalty point is deducted. The most interesting question is, how many penalty points can a translator afford? According to this model, a translation is still acceptable if it has a maximum of 50 penalty points per 1,000 words. So this is the fail or pass threshold. By the way, all those settings are fully customizable. If you're not happy with the delivered templates in Studio, you can just define your own categories, severities, and your scoring and penalty points. Let me now click OK to close the project settings window. Now I'm going to create a project package to assign to my translator. In this wizard, I just click Next and Next again. And then I select my imaginary translator called Tom. Let's go to the next screen and click Finish to actually create the project package. By the way, this project package contains all the TQA settings of my template, meaning it can be applied by the translator and, most importantly, later by the reviewer. For this step, let us imagine that I'm now the translator. I've received the project package file and I'm going to open it to extract the package content and import it into my Studio environment. Here it is. I can double-click the project and then I double-click the file name. And this is the file that I need to translate. As it is not very exciting to watch me translate, I've taken the liberty to fast forward this presentation a bit. So this is my fully translated document. Let me first close it. And then I create the project package for the reviewer. Now I need to click Next, Next again, and here I assign the task to reviewer called Ralph. The task is of the type Review. And now I click Next. And finally I click Finish to proceed to the package creation. The package is then sent to Ralph, who is going to do the review while applying all the TQA rules. Let me introduce you to our fictitious reviewer called Ralph, again played by, well, myself. I've received the package from the translator and I'm going to open it to import it into my Studio environment. Now here's the package, or rather the project. I double-click the project and then I open the file for review. And I click Finish to create the project package for the reviewer. Let me now switch to the Review tab. In the Review tab you can see that the Track Changes function has been enabled automatically. In Studio 2015 you can toggle between normal track changes and quality assessment, which is what I'm going to do now. Take a look at the first segment. Let us assume that I don't really like the way how Microsoft has been abbreviated. So I would like to use the full name, Microsoft, and change the segment accordingly. As you can see, it looks like normal track changes, but actually it's more. When I go to the next segment, I'm prompted to add a quality assessment item. The quality assessment items are taken from the project template and a TQA model assigned by the project manager. In this case, I assign doc language accuracy to this error. However, it's not really a serious error, so I'm going to assign a severity level minor to it. So it leads to the deduction of just 1 penalty point. Take a look at segment number 4. There's something else that I don't like. Dialogfenster is the translation for dialog box, but actually it's not entirely correct. It should be Dialogfeld. So I'm going to do the correction, and again I'm prompted to assign a category. In this case, it's a terminology error. And while it's not really critical, it's still serious enough to justify the category, or rather the severity, major. And one more thing, I found a spelling mistake, or rather the use of the old way of writing the word does. According to the spelling reform, it should be a double S. And this one has what kind of category? So let me say it's accuracy. And again, it's minor. And now I click OK. Let me assume that these 3 items were all the mistakes I found in the translation. Now I go back to the Home tab and I complete the review. Upon completion of the review comes the final judgment. In this short text, the translator was allowed 7 penalty points, and he just reached, well, 7. So this is a pass. Now I click Finish, and the file will be saved. There's even more that you can do. Let us assume that you would like to generate a report. This report can then be given to the translator, the project manager, or the client. To do this, you select Batch Tasks, and then you click the Batch Task Translation Quality Assessment. Now I click Finish to run the task and close. All the reports can be found in the Reports view. So this is the Translation Quality Assessment report. Once again, this translation is a pass, according to the pass-fail threshold. You see a summary on the document, how many segments and words and characters it contains. Then you see the TQA configuration, taken from the TQA model that was used by the project manager. Then you also see what kind of categories of errors have been found in this text. So we have 2 occurrences of minor errors, in this case accuracy, and 1 occurrence of a major error, a terminology error. And on the bottom, you can also find some details, the 3 affected segments. By the way, you can forward these reports to users who don't have Studio installed. for example to the end client. To do this, you click Save As, you select the location and the output format, for example Excel. So I'm going to call this TQA report. I can forward this, for example, to the project manager or to the client, and I can, of course, also give the translator the corrected SDLXLIF file. After the quality assessment, the translator can open the corrected SDLXLIF file and then take a look at all the corrections. By the way, the translator can switch to the Review tab and then filter to show only those segments that contain TQA markers. So in this case, I can focus on the segments that have failed the assessment phase. I can use this to update my translation memory and avoid such mistakes in the future. Last but not least, this is what a TQA report looks like in Microsoft Excel. As mentioned before, the report can be sent out to various users, such as the end client or the project manager. The report states that this translation was a pass. It also lists the segments that required correction, and you see details on what has been corrected and why. So this report is beneficial even to users who do not speak the target language in question. It helps the parties communicate and avoid any such mistakes in the future and increase the quality with each project. Now you have seen a concrete example of how TQA works in practice. It helps get all players in the supply chain on the same page. It improves communication between the different parties, helps increase quality, and minimize customer complaints. Therefore, TQA is the ideal tool to create customer satisfaction and thus customer loyalty.